go live. Let's see. Just let me switch this camera around. This is gonna be out of the secrets of esoteric Christianity. And we're gonna go into the doctrine of reincarnation and karma. So this is gonna give us a lot of insight on basically the judgment that is about to take place. Basically using precepts out of the Bible, but basically telling you what they really actually mean. Okay? And the only reason I'm doing a live video is because every time I keep trying to make videos, it keeps cutting off at a certain time, I guess because data issues. So I'm going to just basically get into this based upon that. And I'm going to jump right into it today, so you can just read it. The doctrine of reincarnation and karma. Reincarnation. In this universe, everything is in motion. Movement causes transformation or change. This is an unchanged, everlasting constant. A law of the cosmos. That's crazy because now I just start seeing orbs on the paper and everything as soon as I start reading it. The transformation process occurs in stages, phases, and cycles, according to the law of activity and rest. Every unit of life develops its consciousness. The cycle of activity begins with birth, youth, and maturity, and concludes with so-called death, which is the era of rest. The cycle is repeated until the goal for that life unit is met. Reincarnation is a manifestation of the law of activity and rest in human evolution. It is known as Gilgal in Jewish mysticism and was taught by the Greek philosophers Plato, Pythagoras, and Plotinus. Most of the world's religious writings contain references to the law of albeit some are hidden. When man got in tune within matter, meaning the body, it became necessary for him to free himself. However, according to our observations, mankind as a whole is not pursuing this aim since he is unaware of the purpose of his existence. The inner self promptings are misconstrued as the selfish ambition of the personal ego. In some way, having a physical body is a great advantage since it allows for quick spiritual development, but it would be foolish to prolong our stay in the world of matter. This plane of consciousness is only a stage on the path to our spiritual destiny. Larger efforts, greater tasks await us somewhere in the cosmos' vast reach. We must acknowledge that the physical world is not our true home. We are spiritual creatures who have spiritual ancestors. Ignorance and egoistic desire are the two negative forces that keep us bound to the will of birth and reincarnation. Will means rotas. Just like Torah is where Torah comes from. It says rotas Torah, the will of the law, which is Torah. As our personal will and consciousness become connected with the divine will and mind of our true self, we gain spiritual freedom. Causes bind us to the will of rebirth. Every situation has two sides, basically duality. We've already discussed the negative factors. Positive causes include our desire for excellence and the balancing of karma. The soul's intellectual will is the first positive cause, as human perfection can be advanced by interacting with and masterfully overcoming matter's opposition. Karma binds us to the will until it is erroneous energy is expanded, balanced, and compensated, or the law of grace is invoked to override the karmic condition as a result of spiritually learning the required lesson that the law anticipated one to learn. The concept of human soul being born cyclically into the physical world is known as reincarnation, but there are numerous titles for reincarnation, each with a slightly different meaning and implication. These are the following terms: rebirth, re-embodiment, transmigration, metempsychosis. The term transmigration frequently conjures up images of retrogression of man re-embodying as an animal. This is a spiritual impossibility since the human spirit, once personalized, can never revert to an undivided animal soul. The animal vehicle cannot bear the enormous radiation and magnetics of the human personalized spirit. This concept of retrogression, or the transmigration of the human soul into an animal form, is a misunderstanding of a doctrine that teaches the similarity of human characteristics to animal nature, which is retained embodiment after embodiment until the energies underlying the bestial nature are transmuted. Thought and feeling can also greatly influence and shape the astral form. They tend to reflect the soul's essence. If the human spirit is beastly in nature, the astral body will reflect that. When the lower components of the soul, the astral and etheric bodies, are discarded by the human spirit, they may gravitate to similar environments and objects. Thus, we may have prospect of these ethereal cadavers attaching themselves to animals. This is likely where the concept of humans incarnating as animals originated. If reincarnation is a cosmic rule, a doctrine of truth, why is it not taught by the priesthood in churches? This is a prevalent question among esoteric church members. Unbeknownst to them, this teaching was a fundamental principle of the early church, and allusions to it abound in the scriptures and gospels. Saint Augustine, Saint Clement, and Origen all believed and understood the theory of reincarnation. So did polemic bishop of Synonius, 370 through 430 AD, meaning after death. Saint Gregory of Nyssa, 257 through 333 AD. These is basically all of the early scholars of the Roman Catholic Church and all of those that took canonized the Bible and said what was good and what wasn't good and what they saw fit. And some people that actually believe this stuff, but you know, higher ups, got them to abolish it. Was a firm believer in the rule of law and writing. It is absolutely necessary that the soul be healed and purified. And if this does not take place during its life on earth, it must be accomplished in future lives. In his literary writing, Origen expounded on the law. He wrote a lot about the law of re-embodiment. However, in following decades, the mystical doctrine of Origen were anathematized in the Council of Constantinople in 553 AD, and numerous references to reincarnation in the Gospels were removed. This council is basically giving a history on the earlier church and esoteric knowledge and exoteric knowledge and how we got to this point. This council, presided over by Emperor Justinian and boycotted by the reigning pope, was a parody of the Council of Sages, which met on a regular basis under the auspices of the Great White Brotherhood. The participating bishops of this council agreed to the dogmas drafted by Justinian and his co-conspirators, with the majority of them doing so out of fear of the emperor. There was a lot of that going on. The doctrine of reincarnation was rejected because it contradicted the dogma that the emperor and his bishopric circle desired to promote: eternal damnation, vicarious atonement, resurrection, and Jesus' uniqueness as God's single son. Okay, I guess that's where that concept came from. The conspirators denounced reincarnation at this council in order to gain greater political power and corrupt men's minds. The ascending bishops were not cross bearers for the Master Jesus. Their terror outweighed their affection for him. Their lack of bravery in action initiated and perpetrated. Well, what you expect with people, the same people that crucified the man, are now basically getting to decide on what parts of his life they want to implement into their society and what parts they don't, and basically to fit their dogmas and their narrative. Makes sense. A deception that continues to mislead the flock of Christ to this day. This deception fosters a spiritual slothfulness and fearful attitude in which redemption is looked for and dependent on others rather than one's own mystical resources. One of the issues that the Gnostics and the esoteric church disagreed on was reincarnation. Before being translated and altered by people affected by newly formed creeds and dogmas, the original holy scriptures and gospels contain positive allusions to the law of reincarnation as taught by the Nazarene master. However, certain reincarnation related material remains in the translated distorted books. Due to intolerance, racism, and the limitations that they impose on their consciousness, some biblical students are unable or unwilling to see the implied law in these texts. Yeah, there's a lot of biasism and a lot of other stuff why people they purposely ignore the facts that are right in front of them, you know? Just like his brothers out there teaching on the streets, pointing out certain facts to other Christians. And being that it's right there in the book, they still gonna ignore it to the fact because, you know, how they were taught to perceive things to be. This result in a lack of spiritual discernment and comprehension, which are required to intuitively read between the lines and extract the essential meaning. These intriguing passages will be quoted later. It is critical to remember that not all of Jesus' teachings were recorded in the canonical gospel. The majority of his secret teachings were passed down orally, and some of his oral teachings have found their way into current mystical institutions and fraternities. We should also not ignore the presence of hundreds of additional passages that were arbitrarily dubbed apocryphal, meaning hidden, or even works of the devil, and were not included in the Bible because they contradicted the dogmas that the priesthood wanted to propagate. Some of these texts include Gleaming Diamonds of Gupta Vidya or Ancient Wisdom. How is the veracity of reincarnation established? Based on personal experience, these necessitates mystical development with a certain degree of progression down the path of evolution, the path of initiation. Some people who believe in reincarnation are overly concerned with discovering their true identity. This is illogical because their current identity has yet to be discovered, realized, and known. Why waste time and effort on something that would happen organically over time when more vital concerns such as self-realization await one's attention? It is risky to enter the mind prematurely in order to recall former incarnations using instruments such as hypnotic regression, medications, and others of a similar sort. Nature has certainly created the human psychomatic system and circuitry in such a way that man would forget his previous lives for an important reason: to maintain mental pose and balance. Man drinks the water of leaf at each embodiment to forget harsh events from the soul's past. Prematurely awakening these memories would simply disrupt the individual's psychological stability and sanity while also enhancing egoistic emotions, vanity, pride, and a false sense of su- su- superiority. I be fumbling over these words because, they be getting me sometimes. Nature does not and will not withhold knowledge and information from man when he reaches a particular stage of development and maturity. Man will recollect former lives without the use of force or artificial. That would be the Akashic records, which is said to be within the ether and in our DNA. DNA, basically hidden memories. Junk DNA, but during this solar influx will be unlocked. Interference with his psyche without becoming interfering with his interference with his psyche without becoming a psychiatric patient. Those who provide psychic readings and hypnotic regression sessions to individuals should be aware of the potentially grave implications of their acts, since these would flood their patients' psyches with buried data that their consciousness may not yet be ready or able to manage. However, without firsthand experiences, man would always have concerns about the law of reincarnation, especially if he has not accepted life beyond so-called death. From that perspective, reincarnation appears to be a fantasy. Fortunately, there are ways to strengthen one's confidence and faith in the law, no matter how flimsy those views may be. The truth is not only found outside, but also within. The truth seekers will conduct a rational investigation using less dangerous means than hypnosis to determine the accuracy of spiritual principles revealed to man by higher intelligence. The students' primarily research and method of inquiry would most likely be along the lines of reason, objectivity, a study of scriptural revelation, a student of those who have spiritual experiences and understand those with spiritual authority, and a study of the phenomenon of spontaneous recollections. Although the lines of logic, we can begin our investigation by looking into the numerous inequalities, complexities, and differences among the sons of men. Why are some people born rich while others are born poor? Why are some people born healthy in mind and body while others are born with physical or mental handicaps? How do we account for the phenomenon of child prodigies? How can we address the issue of varying mental capacities? I was about to say capabilities. I'm trying to read fast. As well as the diverse moral, cultural, and spiritual standards that each individual demonstrates. Education, environment, and genes are small components that do not entirely explain life as we know it. Why does it appear that God has favorites? For example, Jacob triumphed against Esau. The law of reincarnation fills a void, the missing link that connects the many aspects of our understanding of inequality, the expression of the laws of karma and reincarnation is the many sorts of man and their point of progression. One appears to come into this world to spend a brief existence and then leaves without accomplishing one's ambitions. What is the point of this? If one's aspirations are impossible in a single lifetime, then our existence here is useless and pointless. Continuing our logic, we would see God's kindness and grace at work in our lives, and that reincarnation is the manifestation of that mercy and love. As previously stated, the Gospels and Jewish scriptures are rife with references to the law of reincarnation. Here are a few examples verses. All right, let's see what we got here. It's my first time reading through this chapter. Frequently cited by law students and researchers. I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out. Revelations 3 and 12. This verse implies and represents that the individual who frees himself from the bounds of matter engages in active labor in the spiritual realms, guiding the energies and powers of nature in accordance with the grand design, God's plan and will. The attainment of liberation or salvation ensues personal emancipation from the cycles of birth and reincarnation, also known as samsara. A liberated creature is no longer compelled to reincarnate. Instead, he goes no further out unless it is to help less advanced individuals. All right. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Malachi 4 and 5. Elijah's appearance occurred through reincarnation in the form of John the Baptist. Jesus had this to say concerning John's true identity. Truly I say to you, among those born of women, there has risen no one greater than John the Baptist. All the prophets and the law prophesied unto John, and if you are willing to accept it, he is Elijah who was to come. Matthew chapter 11, 7 through 15. Some biblical scholars believe that Elijah's rebirth was an exception rather than a natural law. Yet, the overall principle or law was not rejected by the Nazarene master. In certain gospel texts, he freely discussed it with his disciples. Whom do men say that the Son of Man is? And they said, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He said to them, but whom do you say I am? Simon Peter replied, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered to him, blessed are you, Simon Bar Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the powers of death shall not prevail against it. Matthew 16, 13 through 20. Though Jesus' incarnation, we believe he intended to emphasize the potential of man obtaining Christhood in a single lifetime, and therefore attaining redemption without the need for reincarnation. In the preceding stanza, Jesus disclosed to Simon his former identity as Peter. The expression on this rock has a twofold meaning. Peter means rock, but the rock that death shall not overcome is the law of reincarnation that Jesus was referring to. And this was supposed to become one of his church's foundations, its foundation. Another Exodus verse demonstrates the connection between rebirth and karma. Keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgressions and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty. All right, let's see what it got to say about that on the next thing. Visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and upon the children's children unto the third and fourth generations. Exodus 34:7. If taken literally, this text portrays Jehovah as lacking in genuine mercy. After all, why should an innocent offspring suffer for the misdeeds of the progenitors? The above verse, karmic retribution meted out to the children and children's children, refers to the karmic payback that the reincarnating ego must pay in subsequent embodiments. Okay? Karma is the law of cause and effect and known as the law of consequence or the law of equilibrium. It is the law of and yea, so shall you reap that Jesus and Paul instilled in the masses according to Jesus. With what measure you meet, it shall be measured to you again. Matthew 7:2. Jesus is actually implying that we should be responsible for the burden of our sins. We are also told in Galatians that every man shall bear his own burden. Galatians 6:5. Every man must confront the repercussions of his own actions, whether in thought, speech, or deed. The master's own statement contradicts the belief that one only has to have faith or believe in Jesus to be saved from sin. The authentic teachings of Jesus exhort us to spiritually maturity and independence from others. Be separate. It is mentioned in the book of Jubilees in an apocryphal text how the higher law deals with man. With the instrument with which a man killeth his neighbor, with the same shall he be killed. After the manner that he wounded him, in like manner shall they deal with him. 9 for 9, 242. Karma is a manifestation of divine justice and mercy. Aside from being a contributing influence on a person's evolution, it is one of the omniverse's constant that applies and is readily visible, acting in the domain of physics. The law, contrary to popular belief, is impersonal unbiased, and does not punish. Rather, it teaches and educates. It makes a person see the folly, meaning the foolishness of his actions, as well as the goodness of his good works. It demonstrates to a person the relationship between acts and their effects. So, cause and effects. Between acts and their effects. So, basically, when you do something, this is what'll come about it. The law of cause and effect. Negative activities have negative consequences, while positive actions have positive consequences. Karma is God's weapon for balancing out perturbations and the tile's harmony. The law declares in what appears to be harsh terms, vengeance is mine, I will repay. Romans 12 and 19. Each person generates karma by his or her everyday thoughts, statements, and acts. No being lives without creating karma, because no being lives without setting forces in motion in his or her daily life. Simply breathing is karmic in one sense, because every breath has an effect and outcome in the physical body. Karma is a person's self-made destiny. A Christian of esotericism believes in the presence of the law because he sees its manifestations in his daily life. That's very true. To such a person, the Orthodox Christian belief of remission of sins is incompatible with the rules of karma. That's why the church tells you that the law is done away with, because they don't want to deal with that part. Now look at this again. To such listen, he said a Christian of esotericism believes in the presence of the law. Like we believe in the law, the Torah, we understand the cause and effects of nature, because he sees its manifestations in his daily life, which we do. To such a person, the Orthodox Christian belief of remission of sins is incompatible with the rules of karma. See? And is viewed as a notion developed by the church to control the minds of the public. The only way to avoid unpleasant outcomes is to avoid initiating harmful causes. Ahimsa, or harmlessness, should be the devout's continual expression to turn the other cheek. Unless one is detached to one's act, karma binds one to the will of birth and rebirth. Viraya, let me see if I said that right. I'm sounding it out. Viraya, or detachment, is a required virtue commonly taught by the gurus to their chalas to acquire. The entire philosophy and practice of karma yoga, as taught by the avatar Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, is being detached from one's acts. Eastern beliefs may be the greatest way to understand karma. Karma is classified into three categories according to the Hindu philosophy. They are classified as follows: Sattvika karma, where the results of one's actions are not desired, where one is unattached to them. Rajasa karma, where acts are performed sensuously for the desire of their fruits and rewards. tamasa karma, where forces are put into motion out of ignorance, confusion, and delusion without any real care and concern for the consequences of one's deeds. Salah? Well, that's the whole book of the doctrine of reincarnation and karma out of the sacred secrets of esoteric Christianity. So I figured I'd do a live reading that instead of breaking it down into 3-4 parts because my daddy won't record but so much. All right, I'm out. Love y'all. Y'all bless.